So we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 15, and the text for today is text 35. So Mataji, if you could start with Om Namo Bhagavate 3 times, and
Yes,
then
Mataji.
the shlokas and then the text. Meanwhile, I'm just messaging Mataji to ask how long she is.
Okay.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nastapráyesva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utama shloke bhakti bhavati naistiki. Hare Krishna. So let me just get the shloka.
Text 35. The Pandavas retire timely.
Okay. Yatha matsyadi rupani date jaya dat yatha natha bhubara shapito yena jahotakcha kalevaram. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji is joined, so let me ask her how she would like us to proceed. Hare Krishna Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who has joined the group and are about to join.
Thank you, Mataji.
We are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 1, Chapter 15, which is the Pandavas retire timely, and we are on text 35. Mataji, we've just done the Manglacharan and we've read the text. So would you like us, can we hand over to you now, Mataji?
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the chance and opportunity to do this service. So my prayers to all of you. If I make any mistakes, please do correct me. Thank you again. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharineni Vishesha Srimivadi Pashata Deshikarine Jai Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Siva Sat Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Mataji. So you have read the translation, so it's just the purport to read. Okay, I'll read the purport, Mataji. So
Mataji, we haven't done the translation, we've just read the text.
Okay, Mataji. So I'm just going to read the translation and purport. So thank you for reading the Sanskrit verse. So translation. So 1.15.35. The Supreme Lord relinquished the body which he manifested to diminish the burden of the earth. Just like a magician, he relinquishes one body to accept different ones, like the fish incarnation and others. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is neither impersonal nor formless, but his body is non-different from him, and therefore he is known as the embodiment of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. In the Brihad Vaishnava Tantra, it is clearly mentioned that anyone who considers the form of Lord Krishna to be made of material energy must be ostracized by all means. And if by chance the face of such an infidel is seen, one must clean himself by jumping in the river with his clothing. The Lord is described as Amrita, or the deathless, because he has no material body. Under the circumstances, the Lord's dying or quitting his body is like the jugglery of a magician. The magician shows by his tricks that he is cut to pieces, burned to ashes, or made unconscious by hypnotic influences, but all are false shows only. Factually, the magician himself is neither burned to ashes nor cut to pieces, nor is he dead or unconscious at any stage of his magical demonstration. Similarly, the Lord has his eternal forms of unlimited variety, of which the fish incarnation, as was exhibited within this universe, is also one. Because there is innumerable universes, somewhere or other, the fish incarnation must be manifesting his pastimes without cessation. In this verse, the particular word adapter, eternally accepted, and not the word titva, accepted for the occasion, is used. The idea is that the Lord does not create the fish incarnation. He eternally has such a form, and the appearance and disappearance of such an incarnation serves particular purposes. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.24 and 25, the Lord says, "The impersonalists think that I have no form, that I am formless, but that at present I have accepted a form to serve a purpose, and now I am manifested." But such speculators are factually without sharp intelligence. Though they may be good scholars in the Vedic literatures, they are practically ignorant of my inconceivable energies and my eternal forms of personality. The reason is that I reserve the power of not being exposed to the non-devotees by my mystic curtain. The less intelligent fools are therefore unaware of my eternal form, which is never to be vanquished and is unborn. In the Padma Purana, it is said that those who are envious and always angry at the Lord are unfit to know the actual and eternal form of the Lord. In the Bhagavatam also, it is said that the Lord appeared like a thunderbolt to those who were restless. Shishupal, at the time of being killed by the Lord, could not see him as Krishna, being dazzled by the glare of the Brahmajyoti. Therefore, the temporary manifestation of the Lord as the thunderbolt to the restless appointed by Kamsa, or the glaring appearance of the Lord before Shishupal, was relinquished by the Lord. But the Lord as a magician is eternally existent and is never vanquished in any circumstance. Such forms are temporarily shown to the Asuras only, and when such exhibitions are withdrawn, the Asuras think that the Lord is no more existent, just as the foolish audience thinks the magician to be burnt to ashes or cut to pieces. The conclusion is that the Lord has no material body, and therefore he is never to be killed or changed by his transcendental body. Hare Krishna. Okay. So it's a beautiful, beautiful verse, there are quite a few key things to look into this in this verse. But let's just start with the fact, let's just start with what Krishna told the gopis after the Gopi Gita. He returned, the gopis were missing him, if you remember, after the Ras Leela. The gopis got a bit proud, and the gopis started thinking that I am the best, and that is the reason Krishna, they felt a bit proud, and Krishna left them, because where there is pride, there is no love. So Krishna left them, and then the gopis, they sang the Gopi Gita, where they were praising Krishna to say, you know, where have you gone? You have left us, and we are nothing without you, so please do come back. And then Krishna returns. Krishna comes back to them, although he comes back to them in the Narayan form, and until Radharani comes in front of him. And as soon as he sees Radharani, he could not keep up his Narayan form. He just had to go back to his two-handed form, his Gopa form again, because he can pretend with everybody and anybody, even the other gopis, but when it came to Radharani, he just could not keep up his anger, his anything, and he returned and he told Radharani and the gopis that whatever I do, I can never. You have worshipped me and you have loved me, and I can never ever be separated from you. We are eternally together, and there is no question of us ever being separated. So as we think of this thought, we are reminded again that, in every verse that we read in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Srimad Bhagavatam or in any of the Shastras, Krishna keeps telling us that he is never ever separated from us. He's always with us. And he is more with the devotees. He's more with the ones, he's always in our heart, whether they are the demons, the asuras, or whether they are the devatas or the gods or the common jivas or the smallest of atoms or particles. He's always with us. He's never separated from us. And as we come into this verse where Arjuna is talking in the pretext of the verse, we've been hearing about how Arjuna was devastated after Krishna left this material world, and how Yudhishthira came to know about it, and he saw the different signs where the signs were not very good, and it told him some calamity has happened. And then Arjuna finally told him that, the Lord has left this material world. But despite this, in the previous verses, we get to see how Arjuna realizes the fact that even in separation, even though he thinks that he is separated with Krishna in this material world, he really is not. Because Krishna, as he told the gopis, as he told Radharani, as he tells us through every single verse in the Shastra, Krishna never leaves us. Krishna is never separated with us. Our love story with Krishna increases because love in separation is beautiful, and love in separation increases with time and increases in intensity, but it is still love. And as Arjuna realizes that although Krishna was separated and he left his material body, he really hasn't gone anywhere. So in this verse, we are hearing once again, how Krishna relinquishes his body, his material body, because he comes to this material world for the reasons as he told in the Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. So he comes to relinquish the burden on earth by removing the unwanted things from this earth. So he relinquishes the burden from this earth. But he also comes for other reasons, because it is required for circumstances, for reasons for him to come to the material world in his various forms. And in this verse, we see how it is being mentioned that Krishna leaving one of his forms, one of his material forms, in the material world does not mean that there is a death in Krishna's body, that that Krishna has left his body, because that concept does not take place when Krishna is present. So we see coming into this text, we see Arjuna distressed but slowly coming to terms with the realization as to why Krishna had to leave this world. Yudhishthira decides, on hearing from Arjuna what has happened, Yudhishthira decides to go back home, back to Godhead again. We see how Kunti Maharani, she doesn't leave with Yudhishthira, the other Pandavas and Draupadi towards north, towards the Himalayas, but she increases her devotional service. She stays back, but she increases her devotional service as it is. She was a great devotee as it is, but she even wanted to perform more devotion towards Krishna, and she perfected her material life very soon, very shortly, and she went back to Godhead again, not going with the Pandavas, but being in the palace, but perfecting her devotional service again. So, and then in the last verse, yesterday, Prabhuji talked about how there are two thorns and how the Lord distinguishes between the two thorns. So the Lord is impartial, Krishna is impartial. He gives the same air for everyone to breathe in, the same water to drink, whether they love God or they hate God. He is absolutely impartial. But just like parents, if you have many children and there is a couple of children who gives more attention to the parents automatically have a natural tendency to be moved towards those children, or be pleased a bit more towards those children, not wanting to differentiate between any child or any children, but there's a natural inclination towards those who are more favorable to them. So similarly, although we are all Krishna's children, the demons and the asuras and the devatas, the jivas and the animals and all living beings, we are all Krishna's children. But where we become devotees, Krishna just becomes a bit more, Krishna just becomes a bit more favorable towards the devotees because they're devotees. So the two thorns that are mentioned in the verse previously are one thorn that pricks Krishna or gives or hurts him, just as, you know, a thorn that bites into or gets stuck into our feet, that pricks us, that hurts us and bites us or gives us, blood comes out sometimes. And there is the other thorn, which is used to take out that thorn that is stuck. So that other thorn is actually doing the service of taking out that which is hurting Krishna. So that both the thorns are exactly similar to Krishna, but one thorn is giving him harming him, trying to hurt him. The other thorn is actually doing service towards him and helping him take that hurt out. So, so in this way, we come into this verse where we see that the Supreme Lord, he has left his body, and we also know from previous verses as to how, and I think this has been covered as to how Krishna leaves his body. Has this been covered already, Mataji, about the hunter?
Yes, lots of devotees have alluded to it, but
Okay,
that's not in repeating if we have the time.
You've done it already. Okay, so how Krishna was killed by the hunter Jara. Okay, now the next point that is alluded to in this verse and explained in this verse as well is how the Lord has a form and how his form is eternal. Now, there is also a reference in the first few lines about the Lord having no form at all. And over here, Prabhupada, in his purport, tries to make a distinction again on the difference between the impersonalism or the Mayavadi philosophy and thinking of Krishna as being the very personal God. So whereas, as we know, the great Saint Shankaracharya mentioned, does anyone know what he mentioned? His famous lines on impersonalism? Brahman. So he said Brahman Satya and Jagat Mithya, meaning that the Brahman form or the impersonal form of the Lord is the truth, and Jagat or the material life is false. So to them, to the impersonalists, the Lord does not have any form. And when the Lord has to come to the world, to them, the Lord takes up a form specific to that particular reason, that particular time and circumstances. The Lord takes up that form and then comes to the material world. And because the Lord comes into the material world, the Lord's body becomes material and the Lord comes under the influence of Maya or the material energy. So to them, the Lord is under the material energy when they come to the material platform, and the form that they take is for a specific reason, for a particular leela or a pastime during that time when the Lord comes in that form. So to them, if the Lord came down in the form of a fish or a boar, or Nrsinga or any other form, it was a form taken by the Lord for that particular purpose, to serve a particular purpose and take part in a particular leela. And they came into the material world, and that is when that particular form happened. That is what the Mayavadi think. So they think that the Lord in his original form is formless. And so when you ask somebody, when you ask them, when you tell the Mayavadi, no, our God, our Krishna, he's the most personal nobody can be more personal than Krishna. He's with us all the time. He responds to us. He talks to us all the time. We say something to us by ourselves in our heart. Krishna listens. If we say that with truth, Krishna listens to that. And he responds to that in whatever way, in whichever way, whether it's through, a sign, whether it's through somebody else, but Krishna responds, and he responds to every single person and deals with us in a one-to-one way. So nobody can be more personal than him. And yet, if you ask a person who does not believe in the personal form of the Lord, they will ask and question us, but where is your God? Okay, can you show us God? And then, as you will have heard a lot from many other Prabhujis and Matajis, this was asked to Prabhupada as well. And Prabhupada said, but do you really want to see God? Are you qualified enough to see God? To be able to see something, as Prabhuji was saying the other day, if you give a piece of brass as gold to a person who does not know how gold looks like, that person will accept brass as gold. So you can say you cannot explain God to a person who doesn't know how God is, who has never seen God. So if you take that person to the deity, that person will say, and you say, well, this is God. This is God in our temples, at home. This is the deities of the God. But they would say, but this is just a stone statue. We have Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the great Acharya, who was a father to Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, who was Prabhupada's guru, Diksha Guru. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur once saying that if you give a Shaligram Shila to a non-devotee, rather than or instead of praying to the Shaligram Shila, the non-devotee will use that as a stone to break a peanut. So that is what it is to them. So to a non-devotee, it is impossible to make someone understand that our God is great enough to be able to take any form, anytime, anywhere. So Prabhupada alluded to, again, the Mayavadis who are in all other religions, all other beliefs that think of God to have an impersonal status or is formless. And Prabhupada brings our attention to the fact that the Lord definitely has a form. And then he talks about how Krishna, leaving this form, how the Lord relinquishes one body to accept a different body, and he gives the example of the fish incarnation. Now, what do we mean by that? So Prabhupada said the Lord's body is Amrit, it is deathless. Okay, and he also alludes to some other form. He alludes to the form tate, which is eternal, instead of Dhitva, which is temporary. And whilst mentioning these words, whether it's Amrit or Tattva, which is eternal and deathless, and comparing that to something which is temporary, Dhitva, he gives us several examples. So Prabhupada says, and the Shastras and Acharyas say that the Lord has innumerable eternal forms. Okay, so we cannot, it's just, you know, with each wave, and he gives, you know, with each wave, just as, you know, each drop of water in a wave, there are that many types of forms there are. And, you know, even Anantashesha, the Nag on whom Vishnu resides, he cannot stop talking about the various forms of the Lord and glorifying the Lord. The Vedas are, there is no end, there is no start, and there is no end to the Vedas. The Vedas are as eternal as the Lord, and yet right at the end of the Vedas say neti, 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 na iti, na iti, na iti. There is no end to the Lord, there is no end to the Lord, there is no end to the Lord. So there is no end to the qualities of the Lord, and there is no end to the forms of the Lord. The Lord's forms are innumerable and they are eternal, meaning they already exist. So the Lord creates innumerable amount of universes as he breathes in, and as he breathes out, as we know, as he does that through Karna Daksha Vishnu. So when he breathes out, there are innumerable number of universes created, and in those innumerable number of universes, in each universe there are innumerable number of planets, and in or you know, planetary systems rather, and in those innumerable number of planetary systems there are innumerable number of planets, and in each planet the Lord goes and performs leelas in one of his eternal forms. So if we see that the Lord, even in Dwapara, in Satya Yuga, he came as in his Matsya avatar, it does not mean that to be able to perform that particular pastime in Satya Yuga, he came into the material world and he took the form of a fish, or he entered the body of a fish. He did neither, because the eternal form of a fish and the eternal form of the Lord as a fish already exists. And because the Lord's pastimes are eternal and continuous in each universe, when the Matsya avatar completed his Leela on this platform, he will have immediately left this platform and performing a Leela somewhere else, in some other platform as Matsya Leela, in the fish form. When the Lord took a human form and he was a baby, his baby form is that is one of his forms, one of his eternal forms. So when he performed his leelas as a baby, you know, whether it is killing the cart demon, or whether it is, you know, killing Putana, his leela on that, or even when he ate dirt and he showed the universe to Mother Yashoda when he opened his mouth. When he was a baby, or when he, you know, broke the pots, yogurt pots, and he played with the monkeys and the gopas, that was his baby form. And then we see in his pastime in Gokul and in Vrindavan, he grows up a bit. So as soon as he grows up a bit, that's another form of the Lord. So which means when he takes that little bit of grown up form, his baby form leaves this material world. And that baby form appears or is already doing Leela in some other universe. So it does not mean that like a human body, the Lord is growing with age. The Lord only, the Lord stayed in this material world for 125 years, and yet he looked only as if he was 25 years old. In Golok Vrindavan, in the spiritual world, the Lord eternally looks like a 16-year-old. So the Lord's body is not like our material body, which grows with time and then, has to go through childhood, birth, childhood, old age, disease, and death. Each different, when we see the Lord growing, what we actually see is a different form, a different eternal form of the Lord. So if the Lord goes from age 4 to age 7, age 4, that is one of his eternal forms. Age 7, that is another of his eternal forms. Okay, and when he reaches age 7, all his eternal forms that he will have had when he was age 6 or 5 or 4, 3, 2, 1, all of those eternal forms left this material world. And they appeared in another material world, or they are performing Leelas in other universes and other material worlds at the same time. Yes, so similarly, when Krishna, as his grown-up form, when Krishna leaves this material world due to, apparently being killed by a hunter who thought his feet to be that of a deer, okay, he may have, apparently we think that, yes, Krishna has left his body, but he's not, because that exact same eternal form of Lord is performing pastimes at other universes at the same time. Okay, so Arjuna and Yudhishthira realizes this. They realize that Krishna apparently has relinquished his body, but only and only on this material world, because there is no death of Krishna. There is nothing called death in Krishna. He, as soon as he leaves this material world, he's somewhere else. Krishna can be at the same time at a million and zillion different places at the same time. And we have so many examples of that, whether we see that during the Ras Leela, where he expanded himself in so many forms. We see during that pastime with Brahma, where Brahma took all the gopas and all the cattle to him for the whole year, and Krishna expanded himself as every single gopa and every single cow, and stayed with the different households for the whole year. We see during Krishna's marriage, when he goes in his Dwarka form, Dwarkadish form, he goes to Dwarka and he marries 16,000 wives, and he has 16,108 wives. He has 16,108 palaces for each one of them, and in each one of them Krishna resides 24/7. It was not that he was leaving one wife to go to the other and then go to the other, and he had a calendar and a schedule as to which day he will be with which wife. He was equally with all the wives at the same time on all the days. And that was his expansion. And not just Krishna, we know that this is what happens in the spiritual world, because all of Krishna's associates, or the Nitya Siddhas, the eternal associates of Krishna, who comes to the material world with him when he is performing his pastimes, the Nitya Siddhas, they are also able to expand themselves. So we see when Krishna was getting married, so many times, all at the same time, the relatives, the Yadus, the relatives, the Yadus, we just heard about how the Yadus were, they killed each other in a drunken brawl. They were the demigods, and they were used to Somarasa, and because they had performed their pastimes, they all just killed each other. Apparently in the material world, it seems they all died, but what we know in reality is that they completed their pastimes in the material world, and they departed back to Godhead, back to their spiritual world. So we see how the Yadus, all the relatives, they also expanded themselves 16,000 times, so that they were able to be at all the different marriages, being with all the different expansions of Krishna, all at the same time. And we also hear about how in the spiritual world, in Golok Vrindavan, how Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, they absolutely love to hear about the pastimes that they themselves are performing in the material world, because they had come with Krishna as eternal associates of Krishna. They had also descended to the material world with Krishna to be able to perform the pastimes. And then when Narad Muni goes from here to there, to planet, they love to hear from the associates who return to the spiritual world, or from Narad Muni. They love to hear what their expansions are doing in the multiple simultaneous parallel leelas that they themselves are doing in their expanded forms in the various material worlds. So we know how Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj loves to hear about that. So we know that Krishna has innumerable forms, and Krishna's associates can expand in innumerable forms as well. So when Krishna leaves this material world, it doesn't mean that he is leaving as in dying, but all that is happening is that he is leaving one material world, and he's going to another material world, because his pastimes are eternal and continuous. It stops in one, it happens, and already is happening at another material world. So the Matsya Leela that Prabhupada talks about here is eternal, or it is tattva. It is tate, it is not titva, it is not temporary. It is, Prabhupada also compares Krishna to a magician. So just like a magician has a box, you see the magicians, they have, when they perform, sometimes they have a box, they get inside the box, and then the helper comes, turns the box around, and then a sword is put through the box, so it cuts through the box, and there are two separate bodies of the box, and then each section of the box is opened, and we don't see the magician inside. So we gasp when we first see, the first time any of us will have seen this, we will have gasped that, oh my gosh, the magician is being cut into half. And then when the sides are open, the boxes are open, the magician is nowhere. And lo and behold, he comes out from behind the curtain from some other place. So similarly, Krishna, when he died, apparently his material body is like that box. It was cut. It was pricked with that hunter's arrow. So apparently it was cut and it died. But Krishna wasn't in that body. Krishna is not, and the Acharyas and Prabhupada over and over and over and over stresses this point, that Krishna is non-different to his body, to his name, to his form. Krishna is non-different. We have a different, when we say who we are asked, who are we? Coming into Krishna consciousness, we have come to know that we are the soul and we are not the body. So our soul is different to our body. And our body is different to, what we do, our actions. Our body is not our name. Our soul is not our name. So our name is different, our body is different, our soul is different, our actions are different. We cannot define Krishna with us by thinking about us. So Krishna's form, his name, his body is non-different to Krishna himself. Okay, so when we think that Krishna has disappeared, he has disappeared to some other place, just like a magician hides behind a curtain and comes out from behind the curtain from another place. Similarly, by leaving one material world, Krishna is appearing at multiple other material worlds at the same time in the same form, because that particular form of Krishna is eternal. So that particular form had performed the Leela it wanted to perform in this material world, in Dwapar Yuga. He had taken care of, Vinashaya cha Dushkritam. He had done that. He had taken care, he had ensured that the Yadus have gone back. He had ensured that, his devotees are safe. So he had completed his Leela in this particular world, and he has hidden behind that curtain to appear at some other material world in exactly that same form, because his form is eternal. So when he relinquishes one body, he does not die, but it is just going to another different material world. So these are the two main things that Prabhupada wants us to remember in this purport. And what he also wants us to remember is a few Shastric references to this. Krishna has referred to his eternal form many a times through the Bhagavad Gita, or through Srimad Bhagavatam, or through the Puranas. In the purport, in today's purport, Prabhupada has mentioned Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verses 24 and 25. And I'll quickly read just the translation again. In Bhagavad Gita 7:24, Krishna says that Krishna says that unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So it was the impersonal thing we were talking about earlier. And in verse 25, he says, I am never manifest to the foolish and the unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So Krishna says that to a fool, it is impossible to make them understand my eternal form. So just as I was saying a while ago, how Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying, to a fool, if you give them a Shaligram Shila, they, instead of worshipping it, they would use that as a stone to break peanuts. So it's impossible for Krishna to make people who do not understand him, to make them understand that he has a form. And you see we talked about the demons and the gods, the Asuras, like, Jaya and Vijaya, in all their incarnations as demons, whether it's Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha, whether it's as Ravana or Kumbhakarna, and whether it's as Shishupal and Dantavakra, all these forms, they were very, very high scholars. They were very elevated scholars. It was not that they were fools or unintelligent people, and yet they did not understand Krishna. they did not understand his divinity and did not accept him as the absolute truth. So when we say unintelligent, we do not mean someone who is illiterate, someone who hasn't read the Vedas. Ravana was a huge scholar and a huge devotee of Lord Shiva. So much so, as we know, that that Lord Shiva, when he built his palace in Kailash, in Mount Kailash, because Ravana was a Brahmin, Lord Shiva invited Ravana to do his Griha Pravesh. That is how big a scholar he was. So all of them were scholars. We hear about in the Chaitanya Leela, we hear about Keshav, Kashmiri Pandit, who was a huge scholar, and yet Lord Chaitanya found faults in his verse when he was glorifying Mother Ganges, and that is when Mother Saraswati came to his dreams and said, "You have pride in you. You have pride in you, and that is what is obscuring you from knowing the absolute truth." So we can be as big a scholar as we want to be, but that doesn't make us intelligent. And that is what Krishna says, that to those who are unintelligent meaning those who do not recognize me, those who do not want to recognize me, those who are covered by pride or ego or ignorance, there's no point in revealing myself to them. Even in the Padma Purana, Krishna has mentioned that those who are envious and are always angry towards me, they never ever recognize me. And in this purport, we get the example of Shishupal as well, who was who talked about the Lord, who thought about the Lord 24/7. But was so envious of the Lord that even when he got his moksha, so as we talked about, the Lord is impartial to everyone, whether you think of him in envy, in anger, or whether you think of him out of love. So even Kamsa and Ravana and Shishupal, they were all liberated, although they were liberated in the Brahman to the Brahma Jyoti and did not acquire the personal association of the Lord, but they were blinded by that Brahma Jyoti. The Lord appeared as a thunderbolt when he was killing Shishupal and taking off his head, because Shishupal did not have the intelligence to realize the personal form of the Lord. He did not have the intelligence to realize that this form of the Lord is eternal and never perishes, and that Krishna is eternal. So again, in this verse, we hear about how being separated from Krishna is not is never a truth, because we are never, in reality, we are never really separated from Krishna. We are always with Krishna, and Krishna is always with us. As long as we remember Krishna with love, Krishna is always with us. And we also look into the idea that Krishna doesn't leave a body. Krishna never dies, and his forms are eternal. Krishna does not take up a form just to perform a leela. That particular form eternally exists, and Krishna comes in that eternal form in various times, under various circumstances, to perform a particular type of leela at that particular type of time. And when that time and that particular leela is over, that form of Krishna leaves and is taken over by another form of Krishna, which in itself is again eternal. Okay. So I finish over here, and I request all of you to correct me if I've gone wrong anywhere.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much for today's session. And this was a real enlightenment that Krishna's form is eternal. We know Krishna's form is eternal, but this is going deeper, that his 1 year form is eternal, his 1.5 year form, or 1 year, 1 day form is eternal, and the various stages of his life is eternal. And you put it so beautifully and so simply. It went straight to the heart, and it does make sense now. I mean, at least I didn't think of this before at all. My question is, Mataji, then does his associates also move with him?
Yes.
For example, Mata Jashoda was 35 when Krishna was with her, and then at the age of 5 she became 40. So does she move with him in that other phase where she's supposed to be 35, or?
So Krishna's eternal associates, they come with Krishna as is required. So the three things that dictate what type of eternal form will be taken up by Krishna and his associates are time, place, and circumstance. So if in one material platform, a particular form of Krishna and a particular form of Yashoda Mother is required, that is the form and that is the age Mother Yashoda will come in that material world. Okay, so it is not prescribed to be exactly the same in all material worlds, but the forms are eternal. But as to how Krishna will perform that pastime because Krishna is a man of rasas. He likes variations. He likes his rasas. So as to how he will fine-tune his rasas and what the script of that particular rasa in that particular material world will be is completely dictated by Krishna, and the associates come to him or come with him accordingly. I don't know if that makes sense or not, Mataji.
It does. Thank you so much. I know we are just about to exhaust our time. Are there any other questions or comments from the group? I think there is low attendance in the group today because Keshav Maharaj is here in Kenya, and
Yes.
There was a link sent today that he'll be answering questions and answers. So I think devotees have joined that link, which should have finished now. So I apologize for that.
No, Mataji,
all of them will be hearing the recording. So it's good that we've managed to record it, and I'll put it on the YouTube link.
And I'm really looking forward to listening to Keshav Maharaj tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, so there is 2 sessions in the afternoon. He's going to be talking to my medical students, and there's a link, but that will be 12 o'clock your time. Yes. And in the evening, it will be half an hour before. So every day we meet at 6. So he'll be coming here at my house at 7, which will be 5 your time, but there'll be kirtan, and before he really starts talking, it'll be 7:30, 7:45. So that's the normal link that I send every day. Okay. So in case tomorrow I get busy, because I'll be picking Maharaj from the airport, then he's coming for lunch here, then dinner. So if I'm busy, this is the same link that we meet every day. So okay. Feel free just to join in. I'll transmit it since I have the apparatus here at home. Day after tomorrow, he'll be at the temple, and I'll organize a link. It'll be the same hour link, but I'll organize the computer and something so that you can all watch it. So our normal Srimad Bhagavatam class will resume on Sunday. So Friday and Saturday we'll have Maharaj because he's here in Eldoret. So kindly join.
Thank you, Mataji. Yes, I've circulated your link. Shama will have got it. Yes. So
that's 12 o'clock session.
But there'll be 12:30. Yeah.
There'll be another one at 5:36 as well.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So. Okay. Thank you so much for today's session. We learned something. At least I learned something very new. and I really appreciate it. And thank you for preparing for this class and all the efforts that you put in so that things become simplified for us. I'd really like to appreciate your time, association, and also your availability. So can we all unmute and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once? So in glorification of Mataji. Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Kripa Sindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo,
Namo Namah.
Namo Namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai. Her Grace Her Grace Panchali Mataji ki
Jai.
jai.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to do service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Hare
much. Thank you very much, Shama Vallabha, for joining in. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.